The Short Game is listener-supported on Patreon. If you'd like to support the show and join us on our Discord, head to theshortgame.net or patreon.com/theshortgame.
Welcome back to The Short Game, a show about short video games, games that respect your time. I'm Nate Heininger, and I am joined this week by one fantastic co-host,
Laura Nash.
And this week we are talking about the delightfully ridiculous Switch-exclusive Good Job.
A game that's almost impossible to Google without quotes and the word Switch after it, unless you would like job advice.
Yeah, but you know what? We like to make fun of video game names a lot because of like the extreme love of the like single word colon and then another longer title. And so I really appreciate this game's simple good job.
I mean, it is perfect, and it's exactly what this game feels like. So it's a Switch exclusive from Paladin Studios, and the whole premise is you have jobs to do in this office, like set up the projector, and you can solo or with a local co-op try to accomplish the tasks, but the door might be too small, and maybe it'd be a lot faster to just fling the projector through the wall and destroy things to accomplish your task. It's up to you how you want to beat it, but it's goofy puzzles in an office for people who have not been to your office in a while.
Yeah, it's so you play as the child of what seems to be maybe a retiring or just aging executive of a big, powerful, downtown office, his penthouse on the top floor, wears a top hat sort of guy with a nice tie. And you're the child of this person, and it seems like it's about to be your day to maybe take over the company. And before you can do that, I think you have to. The idea is that you have to work your way up the office, or at least that's how the story I told myself, because there's not a lot of actual narrative or narration in this.
I think I made the joke like nepotism, the game.
Yeah, for sure, especially when you think about how it all works out. So you start on the first floor of this building, and you're completing jobs that are loosely related to the floor that you're starting on. And you working your way up this tower, completing slowly but slightly more complicated and ridiculous objectives. But they're all like really basic-y work sort of things. Restart the Wi-Fi, move this thing over to this thing. They're a little ridiculous where it's like, move this monument from one side of this Zen garden to another side. So not really any sort of realism with it, but
move the boulders. Yeah.
Yeah. Move the boulders. So it's not all like realistic sort of work things, but often seemingly very simple tasks that are complicated by the fact that you are a almost like goat simulator, I am bred.
What was it? Job simulator? Yeah.
Job simulator. Like all these games where you're accomplishing simple tasks, but like either the control system or the world around you makes these jobs really, really difficult. In this game, it's not even that it makes it more difficult. They're generally pretty easy tasks. They complicate it by making the entire office breakable. Like everything in this game, from the walls to the desks to artwork, there's
not the workers. You can't kill people even when you drop things directly on them, but everything else is breakable, including like $10,000 gold vases that are next to the pool. Why would that be next to the pool?
They're everywhere. It's these giant vases.
Everywhere.
And every time you mess up and you break something, a very loud shattering noise happens, and a dollar amount kind of pops out from that. And there's a running counter of how much money you are losing, how much money you're spending accomplishing these really simple jobs. And that's really the game. You walk into a main floor, you're given a set of tasks, and it's up to you to accomplish them with the goal, I guess, of not breaking as many things as possible. The game is intentionally unclear about that. So like
you finish a level and they grade you on three things: speed, how much money you cost the company breaking shit, and then the third is how many individual items did you break. And you get little scores, but it's heavily weighted towards speed to an almost ridiculous amount. Yeah. So the game, you could very meticulously and slowly do everything perfectly. And it took a couple levels for us to realize there is a route to doing everything cleanly and without mess if you just take the time to plan. But it is a lot easier to just instead of filling watering plants with buckets, maybe you should just grab a hose and start going crazy.
Yeah, let's talk about some of the specific sort of puzzles here to kind of make it a little bit more clear, because I know this is sounds a little vague right now. So you walk into a office. It's very how would you describe the sort of the color palette and the layout, what you're looking at?
It's really playful, and I've seen people call it cartoony, and I think it's not. The animations are a little cartoony, but to me it feels very much like you've dropped into a play school model. Everything is very curved and rounded. The character models are like a little black stick figure that if you just thickened all the lines into little blobs, and so you're this little black stick man. Everything is rounded. Everything is flat. Everything's got a couple, colors to it, but it feels like Donut County was in all pastels and very hipster palette. This is like a primary colors kids palette. Take Donut County and take all that weird desaturation from it and put it in this is not hipster looking at all. This looks like corporate plain, a blue is a blue, a red is a red. It's very tactile feeling.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's very bright. Everything is it's pretty easy to see what you're looking at. Everything is very clear, very blocky. Everything has its own space. So there's no confusion about what you're looking at. It's very clearly a shelf. It's very clearly a copy machine, very clearly a guy sitting on a chair, right? Everything is very clear.
Yeah, but there's a ton of everything in this game. So even if it's your job is to set up a projector, they have paintings on the walls and people at computers and people standing in line for the bathroom and all these other things that sometimes are, actually impeding your objective. But if you also just wanted to wander around and cause havoc, one example is before you even get into the puzzles, you're dropped into the lobby. And you pick each puzzle by going into little rooms off your lobby of each floor. And in that lobby, everything is interactive. So it became almost a game. I played this in local co-op with my husband. And without even speaking of it, we just started, before we got into each room to start the next level, doing little pieces of havoc. He would go steal a computer and walk into the lobby, walk into the next area, or I would grab the water cooler and drag it across the floor, spilling water everywhere. We just did that without even discussing it, never commented. It was just okay, cool. We're both here ready to start the game. And what'd you steal? Oh, you stole a plant. Cool. You took someone's coffee mug. Just because.
Literally exactly the same. I played this game with Molly and we were doing the same thing. And so yeah, almost everything can either be picked up or dragged around as long as it seems reasonable that your character could do it. So you can't pick up massive things, but chairs, tables, desks, computers, everything that's on the desk. This game is like you said, it's very clear what you're looking at, but it is densely packed. One time Molly had to step away for a little bit and she had left her character sort of in the elevator. So I spent the entire time while she was walking away taking every single item I could from the lobby and just piling it into the elevator to block her in there. So it ended up having a huge amount of items just in the way. It was awesome. And really all you have as a character, the only moves you have is walking around, a very small jump, right? And then or can you even
jump? Can jump? I don't even think
no, wait,
jumped
hold on.
ever.
No, you can't jump. You can't jump. I don't know what I'm thinking about. And pick up and put down.
And you can use some items too.
Yeah.
If you can take stuff, plug it into other things, but it's very simple controls. It is astonishing the amount of mayhem this game lets you get up to. And we racked up some very high property damage. Even though we weren't trying to go for the fastest times.
The approach that I took in this game was sort of how I would take a game like Dishonored or like a stealth game where once you get caught,
really?
you don't just like restart. You're like, oh, this is how this level is going to go for me now. So I would try to not break things, but inevitably it would break, and it would just become sort of a snowball effect from there, where the more and more I sort of failed at not breaking things, the less and less I felt compelled to avoid breaking things. And so some levels we kind of ended up like on one end of the spectrum or another. We would either do it pretty well, or we gave up on doing it pretty well about halfway through, and we would end the level in just an absolute mess. And usually that mess was influenced by whether the level had some sort of actionable item that added an extreme amount of mayhem. So there are things like wrecking balls that you can control in this game. There is a floor buffer that when you are buffing the floor, it is very hard to maneuver, and you can get going at such speeds that you can break through the walls. There are forklifts. There are all sorts of things that you can drive around and maneuver that just are nearly impossible to operate without causing constant significant damage. And that was at times some of the most fun I had in this game.
Yeah, so this game does mayhem extremely well, because not only does, when you cause something, does the dollar counter go up and you can see how much money you've made, but it's got this great sense of drama and snowballing effects. Like we mentioned the move a boulder in the Zen Garden section. So we had done decently well in the Zen Garden, getting all of these boulders back in place. And there was the last one that I found like in the water, and it was stuck on something, and I was just pushing and pushing and pushing, and I rolled it around the wall, and it shot across like a cannonball and just took out like 5 walls at once. And the way they did it was they almost like slowed it down a little bit at the beginning, and it was just like, and then suddenly it was extremely fast. There was another moment where we were 98% through a level, and then we managed to tip over a giant vat of pink goo. And the slow motion of that thing falling and just destroying was one of the funniest things
awesome.
I've seen in a video game. And then the ticker, of course, just goes back down to like 10% complete. It makes it such a funny game. Yeah.
It's difficult when your job is to clean the pink goo off the floor, and there are multiple things in the room that will result in you putting more pink goo on the floor. So
yeah,
it gets ridiculous. Some of the other jobs that, one of the ones early on that is pretty simple is that you have to go in and plug in a Wi-Fi router. And there are the way to get there is blocked by multiple people waiting for the bathroom. And because we can see the level top down, with like the roof cut off, you can see that the bathroom is soaking wet. Water's running out of the sink or something like that. So they seem to be waiting for that to get cleaned up before they go into the bathroom. And you can't pull the item that you need to pull through that hallway unless they get out of the way. So you have a couple different ways that you could solve it. You could either go past them because you can fit them, go into the bathroom, grab the mop that's in there, mop up the floor, and all of the people will then come into the bathroom, clear that hallway, and now you can get through it. Or you can there's all over the place, and they're a big part of the game, there are gigantic power outlets. And then somewhere else in the room will be a plug that is on like a rip cord, like you pull it really far. When you let go, it goes zip right back to where it started, and it whips back and forth like a tape measure or something, like coming back, or like if you let go of a lanyard. And that is a heavy feeling item. So when it whips around, it breaks anything that's in its path and will break things all around it. But what you can do is when you take that power cord and plug it into the power outlet, the actual cable now becomes a slingshot of sorts. And so with heavier items, you can then take your character and pull an item like a desk or a chair or a printer or something, pull it against that cable, and it will give you a little like action arrow. It'll show you an arrow. It's like a game where you're doing power and angle,
Mm-hmm.
And you'll see a big long red arrow where you're going to let go and it's going to shoot through. And in this case, you can actually, instead of taking the time to clean the bathroom so the guys can get out of the way, you can actually just blow the printer through the wall and just go right around these guys. And there's so many puzzles where you have that choice of either sort of interacting with the world and, solving it from just sort of like this little micro problem that's happening in the stage, or you can just destroy everything around it, revealing the path you need to go through.
We did neither of those things to solve that puzzle. I walked around to the other side and realized that you can hand the power cord like from one person to another, like over the people.
Oh, funny. Yeah. I think there's so many different ways to solve these things, right?
Yeah. And something that I really appreciated is so many co-op games have failure built in. Like Overcooked is you burn the food, you get through it, or you don't. Or, keep talking and nobody explodes. Literally a bomb goes off. There's all these like consequences for failure in a 2-player game. And this game really, if things start going south, you can just lean into it. There's no reason to fight with your partner because it's funnier if it starts going wrong. And it always tells you, no matter how badly you did, at the end it says, good job. And they dance. It's fantastic. So like it feels kind of like Goose Game in that. Like there's a bit of mayhem built in. You can do the task pretty safely, but like you can also run around and do what you want if things are going badly or if you're just bored.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and something that I hadn't really thought about when I was playing this is that, I typically, when you get into a game that it's like a puzzle game, I want it to be a little bit more challenging. And a lot of the times through this game, I did feel like, man, I wish this was a little more challenging. Like the mayhem is a lot of fun, but the puzzles are like really, really simple. And so I found myself, both Molly and I found ourselves saying like, this really just makes us want to play Overcooked because we wanted that like tenseness, that feeling of like accomplishment, because these puzzles, you feel a little bit of a sense of accomplishment, but it's more about the mayhem along the way that got you there. But I think your point about there is no fail state. You can take your time if you want. You can really just goof around and just play this game as simply or as complicated as you want. I think that's a good point. And I think it's something that people should be aware of when they pick this game up, is that this is not like challenging in any way, really. There's a couple puzzles that make you think about the world in a little bit of a different way, but it really is about breaking things and messing around and just maybe playing levels over and over again and seeing different ways to accomplish jobs.
Yeah, it feels weirdly more replayable than a game where it's specifically solve this challenge, because it's not like you can get the answer in this game. Like there's a lot of ways to do it. And I think some of the absurdism is like, this is a game where if you hit someone with a bench, they sit down.
Yeah, there's a lot of jobs where you have to get workers from one place to another because it's like lunchtime is over and they don't want to go back. And a key move is to just get a rolly chair and just run the rolly chair into them, and they'll just sit on the rolly chair. Now you can bring them back to where they're supposed to work.
Yeah, and this is a game where, like, if you turn off someone's TV, they will go to another TV. Like, people are in the way in a really frustrating way, which is great. But I think that I love playing kind of competitive, high-stakes 2-player games, but this is a game we played really late at night, and I think that was fine. It wasn't as if anyone was going to fight over this game. It felt like light, and like watching a variety show is light, or watching like a sitcom is light. Like it felt that kind of niche. And it didn't take a lot of brain, but again, if we had thought ahead, we probably could have done everyone with no mess and made it a more competitive game. And maybe we'll do that in the future.
Yeah, I really think the like light touch of trying to not break things, but not caring when you do, was the most fun approach to this, because with 2-player, it does the sort of thing where if you're in the same area, it's one screen and you can see everything, and if you separate from each other too much, it'll go to split screen. And there's so much going on. There's so many little jobs and it's so dense that it's really hard to be watching what your partner is doing. And so one of the funniest things is you'd be overdoing something, and maybe as a team, you've been doing pretty well at not breaking anything, and then you just hear like a loud crash, and you just see the counter in the top right corner go flying up, and the other person's like, whoops, because they accidentally knocked over a 10K vase. Or maybe you're on your screen and you're focusing on your character, you're doing a job, and then just out of that side comes a boulder just rolling through, breaking everything that you're working on and just smashing the entire section of the screen that you were on. It's mayhem, and I loved having that unknown other chaos actor on the stage, just making everything even more complicated. Though I will admit, I was generally the one who was acting as a chaos machine
agent.
Molly
Yes.
was. Yeah, chaos agent. Thank you.
It's also great because I was so laser focused on my section of the screen in one level where it's multiple floors. You're trying to get these packages that are in various places all the way down to the first floor, and it involves elevators and forklifts and cranes and all this crazy stuff. So this is floor 2, so it's still pretty early in the game. So I had split up from my partner. We were both getting different packages. We were doing our own thing. We were kind of laser focused, finding the package, delivering it. And there was a part where I was using a crane to grab a forklift from one floor to bring it up to the second floor. And I didn't realize that my husband was actually on top of the brace that led the crane. So he was walking, he was using it as a shortcut to get from place A to B. And I started moving the crane, which just started moving him all around the room. And then he fell off and fell 4 floors. It was great. He was like, wait, do you know where I am? No. And I was just moving. I just basically took him and moved him to the other side of the entire floor. Split screen is really good that you can keep focusing, but it's very funny because you have no idea where the other person is.
Yeah.
Also, shout out to when you enter the same screen, they've got this seamless merge where it just kind of comes back into a single screen. It's done very well.
It is. Yeah, it's very clean. It is very, at first, when it first happened, when it went into split screen, it's kind of a little jarring because I don't think I even realized that we'd be able to get that far away from each other. But then from that moment on, it was really easy. Once you understand how it works, it's really easy to keep track of your character, even in the mayhem. And all of this really leads me to believe that this game is at its best as a couch co-op game. I think it would be fun as a single player game, but I really think it would be its best version is playing with someone else. And I know that's not the greatest thing to hear, especially when everyone is kind of stuck at home right now. But I think if you're thinking about picking up this game, I would say that I really think you're going to benefit by having someone to play it with. So trying to set that up, or maybe you're stuck at home with someone who you could play it with. I think this game would work with kids too. Laura, that's something that you brought up before we started recording.
Yeah. So the game is totally clean. There's nothing, often these kind of goofy games have adult humor thrown in. This game is squeaky clean throughout. Mm-hmm. First of all, and second of all, you do not need to be playing with a skilled partner at all. I think no task requires 2 people because of the solo mode. So if you have someone who doesn't play video games, or someone who is, a little kid, even a really young kid, if they can hold the switch and press buttons, even if they're causing just chaos, that's kind of part of the game too. And it's funny.
I think that would be fun, actually. I think that'd be a lot of fun to give a kid the controller and be like, here, you mess up the world as much as you can while I'm trying to do these jobs, or something like that. I think that would be a lot of fun. Isn't the best thing, stop mommy and daddy from doing what they want to do? Isn't that the best game? Now you just do it in a safe environment where they're breaking fictional vases instead of real ones. There you go. Yeah.
I keep thinking about Shane saying the best part of Goose Game was his 2-year-old yelling at the screen about what he wanted to do. In this case, I feel like it's the same kind of thing. Even a solo player with someone else to suggest mayhem might be fun.
And in Goose Game, there are multiple moments where you are being pushed around, or you have limited access to things because there are humans there that are trying to impede you. In this game, you're the boss's kids. You know,
You can do whatever you want.
You can do whatever you want, go wherever you want. Which is it's fun. Like I said, I definitely felt at times similar to how I felt with Donut County too, where I was like, man, I wish that there was a little bit more challenge to this. I wish it was a little more complicated. I wish they'd added a few more wrinkles to the puzzles. But that's really just my preference for games like these, because I think what this game is trying to accomplish, which is just pure wackiness and silliness, it really does a great job.
I cannot wait to watch speedruns of this game. I think it's going to be fantastic. Apparently there already are some, but they're in the 2-hour range. So I'm sure that time's going to go way down as people, and I would love to know how much damage you cause. Like, can you imagine the categories like speedrun for, just time, which I'm sure is just flinging stuff through walls and.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But I'm sure they also have like, caps on the amount of damage you can cause, or like, this is going to be a great speedrunning category.
Yeah, there's got to be some perfect route where if you fling a printer at exactly the right angle, it'll break the wall in the way that you need to go. Or I also noticed there's a lot of I don't know if glitches is the right word for it, but just there's so many moving pieces in this game that things behave a little strangely sometimes. So I'm definitely expecting some crazy speedrun tactics where they're able to almost like break the world and accomplish things.
I did manage to get a forklift stuck in such a way that when I went up and down, the forklift went into the air for a second.
I had the same thing. Yeah, I had the same thing. You'd get like a floating forklift. And actually, I should mention, we had 2 occasions where a key piece of the stage did not work properly, and we actually had to restart the level. So I do think there's a couple things. It's sort of like a Bethesda game. There's so many moving pieces that every once in a while things break. And so that was a little disappointing because that's a hard deduction where you're like, I am certain that this is the piece that I need to place right here because it's the only way to move this puzzle forward. I am so certain of it that I'm going to restart the game to prove it, and we did, and it was a level that Molly had like masterminded the whole puzzle, and she was right. It was actually broken, and we had to restart the level. There was another case where a hose that we needed for a thing got wrapped around something and got like stuck and could not be unwrapped, so we couldn't drag it in the direction that we needed to. So we had to restart the level for that too. So that's a little frustrating. Fortunately, like, most levels take around 10 to 15 minutes if you're doing it at the pace we were doing it. Some of them actually got to like a half an hour because they were pretty big levels. But then some of them, of course, are like 5 minutes. So overall...
Yeah, early ones are like 3. So you can blaze through the early stuff.
Overall, I think we probably beat this in 5 hours or so. Maybe. It's hard to say because we played over 3 or 4 nights just sitting for a little while playing a couple stages, but it's very, very manageable from a sort of like a gameplay session element. Because like we said, there's 10 floors and each floor has 4 levels. So you can play 1 level, you can play 2, you could play a full floor. You can really pick and choose how much you're going to play. And it goes seamless between single player and co-op. There's no difference. It's really just 2 people on the same level.
Yeah, and I really appreciated that the floors were thematic theming, yes, but it wasn't like a mechanic for each floor. It wasn't as if like this floor you learn about power chords and this floor you learn about. No, every level's got their own little quirks. Every level's got its own thing. It's true, like the logistics area has forklifts, but it feels more like you have forklifts because you're in a supply chain package office rather than this is where you learn the forklift mechanic, and we will continue to learn that throughout the game. Like it doesn't feel like that kind of a puzzle power-up game. It feels much more like, hey, we have flower beds in this level because it's an outside garden.
Yeah. There's not a lot of stacking of mechanics, and they do introduce a couple interesting ones. There's like a laser alignment thing that you deal with. Like you said, there's watering plants. There's lots of different things that have you interact with the world in different ways that is fun and is loosely connected to things you might run into in an office building. Like here's the science lab level, so you can imagine the ridiculousness that you're going to have in a science lab and what fun tools you may have at your disposal. They also have a completely arbitrary but fun element of little outfits that you can find.
I love the outfits.
Yeah.
That's also a good, like, you break a bunch of stuff and then you're just like, forget this. Like, if I've already broken $7,000 worth of things in this one room, I'm going to break another 20 things just so I can get a scuba suit.
Yeah, so there's two pieces. There's like a hat or like a head item, and then there's a like chest item. And there are two sets on every stage, and they are matching sets. So it might be like a scuba hat and like a swimsuit, a scuba hat. That's what they call those. Scuba gear
Snorkel.
and like a snorkel. Thank you. Jesus.
It's okay. I said a thematic theming earlier.
Yeah.
We're both in top shape.
Yep. And like a cowboy hat and a vest, and they typically put these in places that you're going to have to break stuff in order to get them. So at the top of a shelf, on a very loosely stacked pile of books, things that you're not going to get to it unless you break everything around it. And so it definitely incentivizes it. And it's fun to mix and match. And my guy was wearing the cowboy hat for most of the time. So I'd say things like, "Excuse me, ma'am," as I'm like destroying everything around them. My apologies.
Yeah, I don't think I ever once got a matching outfit. I think for many levels, I just thought there were hats until suddenly, like Justin had like a Caesar hat, like a laurel wreath on his head, and was wearing a fireman's costume. And I was like, wait a second. Where'd you get the firefighter suit from?
That's awesome. Yeah, I ended up finding an electric guitar, like a flying V electric guitar that you strap on your back.
Were you basically the naked cowboy?
I was a singing cowboy. So I will not repeat them on this podcast, but I was singing songs as a cowboy about the levels that we were doing and the jobs that we were doing. It was a lot of fun. So it added a additional stupid element to the game that made it fun to see like what weird costumes there were and what you could find. And yeah, especially if you weren't watching your partner and then they just show up wearing like butterfly wings or something.
Yeah, often in these kind of co-op puzzle games, you're always paying attention to your partner. I think there's a lot of surprises and a lot of like, someone will just come up covered in pink goo and you're like, what were you doing for 5 minutes?
Well, I mean, because it is a single player game that they let you just have two players in, right? There's nothing that is
right.
You can work together for sure. Like you discover the solve for that puzzle, earlier where you hand something to someone else. And yeah, there'd definitely be times where I'd be like, all right, you go over there and I'm going to slingshot this thing and you see if you can grab it. And like you try to work things out together because it can make the job easier. But you definitely don't have to. And so you don't have to pay attention to your partner. You can each sort of take a job. Like imagine you're playing Goose Game and each of you were trying to accomplish one of the things on the notebook. You could totally do that.
Yeah, and then you come back to the village and someone's just locked in a TV studio and you're like, what were you doing? I think that's why this is definitely in our short game wheelhouse because not only is a playthrough short, but I think there is replayability to the levels, a surprising amount just because I feel like I only saw half of all the levels. kind of.
Yeah, they do some really cool stuff too as it gets later on. There's some interesting mechanics with how they have office workers help you, and it gets a little more complicated. So I definitely think this game is worth playing, but I think you got to be in the right sort of mood for it, ready for something light, something silly that you're not going to have to invest too much time in or too much thought, which maybe is the perfect game right now.
I mean, you're not always going to be at the intellectual level of a Baba Is You. Let's be real.
Or be ready for the frustration and challenge of a game like Overcooked.
Exactly.
I definitely, again, for like my personal taste, when I finished this game, I was like, all right, let's just go play Overcooked again because I want that like, sort of grueling challenge of that game. But this strips out that challenge and that difficultness and just has the mayhem.
I mean, we played after a virtual happy hour and into the night, and it was like, oh yeah, we had some, gin sours, and like, this made the game so much better because we were just like, yep, we can still solve a puzzle, but it is a lot easier to handle than like I would never play Overcooked drunk. I think I would just end up getting a divorce.
So I think that's about everything we have to say about this game. It's fun, it's light, easy to pick up, put down. I think we both recommend it. Highly recommend if you have someone to play with. But if you're out there and you're playing it by yourself, love to hear your thoughts. How you made the mayhem fun for yourself too. But pick it up. I think it's worth it.
Definitely, and it's even more fun if you put it on a giant projector because you can just see things breaking.
Oh yeah,
in glorious HD.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we haven't done this for a few weeks, but Laura, what's making you happy this week?
So I am going to recommend a TV show that showed up on Netflix, and I think I watched it all in a day, which I haven't done in quarantine. I know everyone's been technically supposed to be binge watching, but I feel like I don't have the attention span for it.
I like how the way you presented that is as if that was part of like the quarantine expectations. Yeah, everyone's supposed to be binge watching, but that's one of the harder restrictions for me.
Normally I watch a ton of TV, and I have been lucky enough to be working full time and working a lot of hours, but I think just with everything going on, I don't have the attention span for a lot of the TV shows I've been following. Yeah. So finding something new that I like gobbled up like candy in 4 hours was like, oh no, I ate all of the show before it was gone. It's called Never Have I Ever.
Okay.
It is from Mindy Kaling, and it is about an Indian girl in high school. She's a sophomore. And she, it's got that like teenage rom-com bit, like her and all her friends are going to, get boyfriends this year, hook up with people. But what makes it really fun is like she's an overachiever. They've got a lot of interesting stuff about her being from an Indian family. She's grieving for her dad, which adds an extra layer of like stakes to the show. But it's also fiercely funny, and I don't know if I've praised the best airplane movie in the world, Blockers, on this podcast before. Blockers is a movie that's supposed to be like, you'd think I would never like a show that's about like parents stopping their kids from having sex or their daughters from having sex. That sounds very like anti-feminist. It's actually really funny and sweet. And it's got all the girls in it are really funny. The lead on this was in Blockers. And she has got amazing comic timing. And it's also just fun to have like overachiever nerd girl as a lead in a comedy series. Yeah. She definitely is very horny, and it's very funny. But she's like bad at it because she's 15. Like,
cool.
So it's very funny. It's mostly light, except it's got a bit of grieving for her dad, but it's not disposable. But man, it is an easy binge watch. How about you, Nate?
Yeah, that sounds great. I'll have to check that out. I have watched, Molly and I have watched a little more TV over this time than I think we normally would. We have a tendency to not watch much, find a show, watch it for like 5 days straight, and then not watch another show for like a month, So over the last month or so, because we haven't done this for a while, this section of the show, there are 2 shows that we have watched that I would love to recommend. The first one, it's actually been around for a little while. It's called American Vandal. It's on Netflix.
I love that show.
Have you watched it?
Oh, it's amazing. But please explain to everyone else why I reacted that way.
Yeah, so there's 2 seasons of this show, and it's a mockumentary that follows 2 high school students who are trying to make like true crime documentaries. They are investigating a crime that happened at their school. It's very much making fun of or playing off of Making a Murderer or like the Serial podcast and things like that. Very self-serious, very earnest reporting and really trying to get to the bottom of the crime. But the crime, at least in the first season, is that somebody went and drew spray painted giant penises on 27 of the faculty's cars. And what I loved about this show is that a lot of its sort of marketing and presentation, when you're just maybe going to watch the Netflix trailer or something like that, makes you think it's going to be like like the Onion's approach to a making a murderer documentary. I don't know if you ever listened to the podcast A Very Fatal Murder, which is exactly that. It's like over the top, goofy, very funny, but like no heart to it, just all about being funny. And the thing that really struck us about American Vandal is that you actually end up really caring about all the characters, and it becomes a really good, just, fake but true crime documentary. Like, you want to know who did it, who's going to get away with it, are they going to get away with it? Like, Molly and I were talking about who we think did it. Like, I ended up caring about the actual fake crime way more than I expected. And you end up really liking the characters way more than I expected. And it's funny, definitely, but more funny just because of like the circumstances, and not funny because of any outward direct jokes. Both of the seasons are really good. They're very insightful. They talk a lot about like what it is to be a teenager right now, growing up with the technology that they have. It's really, really interesting, and I really, really recommend it. Great performances all around. It's a lot of younger actors that I've never really seen in anything else, and they do a fantastic job. So highly recommend it.
Yeah, and I will especially, they do ensemble so well in the way that, like, even if you're at a big high school, you kind of know everyone for one or two things. And like the number of people who show up in the background who are unrelated to the crime at all, who are just background characters, who you end up having intense interest in and following them throughout the series is remarkable. And I will not spoil it for anyone, but Nana's Party is probably one of the best episodes of TV of the last 5 years. Stop.
It's so good. I was blown away by how much I enjoyed it. And again, because of how much you actually end up caring about everything and how much heart and insight the show actually brings. So highly recommend it. It had 2 seasons. It got canceled by Netflix. It seems like it was in that, it got canceled more as a result of that weird like breakup between them and some of the other networks, because everyone's trying to make their own streaming services because they didn't technically own the IP of American Vandal, so they don't want it. I don't know. I'm hopeful for another season somewhere because it's great. Super worth it. The other show that I want to recommend is the show that kind of everyone is talking about right now, but we've watched the first season, Money Heist. Have you heard of this?
I have heard of it, but I have not watched it. It is the sexy Spanish heist movie, TV show, right?
Yup. And
it was advertised literally all over Spain when we were on our honeymoon. It was like on every billboard.
Yeah, it's awesome. If you like heist things, which it's kind of like who doesn't, right? There's nothing better. I've not seen anything better than this, and mostly because they managed to take the feeling of a heist, that sort of tense. Is it going to work? Is it not going to work? How are they going to adapt? Oh no, what's going to happen? And it is spread out for the entire show. Most heist things are like one movie, an hour and a half, or one like episode of a overall show. This is the entire show is a heist, and it is phenomenal. The characters you love and hate. It's really hard to pick a side. It's just fantastic. It's shot really well. It's very beautiful. There's a lot of it kind of feels like, although the story is very, very different, it reminds me a lot of how Breaking Bad, especially in its last few seasons, like really felt.
That acceleration as the season progresses. Yeah.
Yep. And also just how it looks and how every character is like, you're conflicted on everyone. You both love the bad guys, but also recognize that they're bad guys, right? And so you're trying to balance the like rooting for criminals and then rooting for the cops, and then they all have their own individual stories and pasts, and it's just awesome. It really is one of the cooler and more engaging shows that I've watched in a while, especially from like an action heist sort of angled. I just can't think of anything that's better than that.
Yeah. So I have a second recommendation that's thematically linked to Money Heist, and that is an old TV show, not super old, but it's from like, I think 2004. It's called Hustle. It is on Amazon Prime if you're in the States. It is basically an episodic TV show where every episode is Ocean's 11. It's like
nice.
long con up. The idea is it's a team of long con artists. They all have their specialties, and each week is a con. And of course there's twists and turns, but it's like 45 minutes, and it's a British show. So it's like, yeah, they had 8 seasons, but there's under 50 episodes because it's British. So like the seasons are tiny.
Yeah.
And all of them are available to stream, but like the cast is wonderful. It's very charming. You can watch basically any con you're interested in, because there's through lines, but the through lines are like, Mickey and Danny don't know who might lead the team. So all like the entire season, they're kind of like making fun of each other. Like that's not a through line. If you are interested in Money Heist, but you only want to commit for 45 minutes, you can watch people pretend to steal the crown jewels. It's great.
Nice. Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, that's awesome. All right. Well, that'll be everything for this episode. So, of course, we want to thank everyone for listening. We want to thank our patrons who are supporting us on Patreon. If you want to join our Discord, everybody for just $1 or more is able to join our Discord, and it is an increasingly lively and engaging conversation. I know personally it's been really nice while being inside and not having the ability to see anybody outside of the people that I'm living with. It's been nice to have sort of a virtual community that I've been able to connect with a little bit more. So thank you all to those of you who are engaged in our Discord, both the people who are posting and the people who are just there witnessing being a part of it. We really appreciate all of you joining, and look forward to anyone out there who is thinking about joining. Now's a great time to get into the Discord. We also have a feedback form on our website at www.theshortgame.net. There you can see every episode that we have, including the ones that have fallen off of our feed. And you can let us know any thoughts, any game suggestions, any things like that through the feedback form on that. We actually are pretty frequently pulling games for this show based off of recommendations, both from our patrons and from people who take the time to reach out to us through that form, as well as our Twitter.
Especially now that with GDC being canceled this year and kind of less game press, like our viewers, our listeners recommending stuff is becoming increasingly important.
Yeah, absolutely. And we really, really appreciate it because, one, you're cluing us into games that we may not have ever heard about. So many games that were way off of our radar have been recommended to us, but also helps us know what kind of games you'd like to see covered. So let us know. Let us know if there's a game that you'd like. Again, Patreon is going to be the most direct way to do that, but feedback through our website or following and tweeting at us at our Twitter, which is @_shortgame. You can also find me on Twitter @NateSTL. And Laura, where can they find you?
On Twitter @LauraJNash.
And one final plug, if you would please take a moment to review us on iTunes. We really appreciate that. It's a great way to sort of increase the likelihood that we show up in search results and whatnot. So really appreciate everyone's time and their thoughts in that as well. And we hope that everyone is staying safe, staying healthy, and staying sane. And with that, thank you everyone for listening to this week's episode of The Short Game.
Bye.